Hey, second grade. Today we are going to be reading a story titled Starry Night. This is a fiction story, which, if you remember from yesterday, a fiction story has made up characters and events, a beginning, middle, and end, and dialogue where the characters are speaking. Our essential question is still, what can we see in the sky? In this story, we will read about what happens when two girls look for the Big Dipper. Remember that sequence tells the order of events in the story. We can use the words first, next, then, and last to tell the order of what happens. Here is an example of our graphic organizer that we will be using together for this story. I'm going to first read through the story one time, and then we will have our Your Turn practice book and work in the book to complete our graphic organizer. But first, I would like you to just listen and follow along as I read. Starry Night. Josie and Ling were good friends. Ling was happy Josie was her neighbor. Josie was happy Ling lived nearby too. Josie and Ling couldn't wait for the school day to end. They planned a sleepover at Josie's house. They were going to sleep in a tent in Josie's backyard. As the class was leaving, Mr. Cortez said, "Your weekend homework is to look at the nighttime sky and explain what you saw on Monday." The class grumbled. "Why the unhappy sounds?" Mr. Cortez asked. "It will be fun looking at the sky at night." Before we move on, second graders, I want you to think. What happened first in the story? What happened on this page? The most important parts. What did we learn about? What did the characters say and do? Think about it and be ready to share when we start to fill out our graphic organizer. The girls arrived at Josie's house and were delighted to be sleeping outdoors. Josie said, "I'm so happy that we get to sleep in the tent. It will be lots of fun." Then Ling said, "I'll get the sleeping bags and flashlights. I brought flashlights so we can play games in the tent." Josie's dad poked his head inside the tent. "Girls, it is a good time to do your homework now because it is getting dark," he said. "Aww," they both complained. "Dad," said Josie, "do we have to now?" "I've already set up the telescope," said Dad. Ling said, "I hope this won't take too long." Josie looked up and spotted a crescent moon. "Did you know the moon's light comes from the sun?" said Josie. "It's funny that it's called moonlight." "Yes," said Ling, who was still thinking about playing in the tent. Josie's dad smiled at the girls and said, "See the stars in the sky? Those points of bright light can form shapes." "You can see the Big Dipper," he said. "It's a group of stars that look like a giant spoon in the sky." Okay, second graders, since we've reached the end of another page, it is time to stop and think about the information on these two pages. What happened next in the story? That's right, Josie and Ling set up the tent and were getting ready to play games. But then something happened. What did Josie's dad suggest they do? Yeah, they had to do their homework and look at the nighttime sky. They didn't really want to at first, but it seems to me like maybe they're finding some cool things in the sky, like a crescent moon and a Big Dipper. I wonder if their attitudes or feelings will change about their homework. Let's continue reading. Josie's dad showed her how to look through the telescope. "Wow, that's more stars than I've ever dreamed of. I never imagined there could be so many." It was Ling's turn to look. Ling cried out, I see a bright light moving in the sky. That's a shooting star, said Josie's dad. This is fun, said Ling. I really enjoy looking at the stars. I think we've seen enough of the nighttime sky, said Josie's dad. You girls can go play now. Aw, Dad, we can't keep looking? Asked Josie. This is really fun. Yes, said Ling. We have had an adventure already, and we haven't even played in the tent yet. You're right, Ling, said Josie. This has been one exciting night. And we've reached the end of our story, second graders. Did the girls' attitude and feelings about their homework change? Yeah, at the end, Ling said, This is fun. So even though they didn't want to do their homework to start with, because it was interfering with their fun times they were going to have, they ended up really enjoying looking at the nighttime sky. All right, now that we've read our story all the way through one time, we are now going to use our Your Turn practice book, page 116, to fill out our graphic organizer for the sequence of the story, highlighting what happened first, next, then, and last. Go ahead and find this page in your book and press play when you're ready to move on. Before we begin, remind yourself that the sequence helps us understand what happens and the steps that characters take to solve problems. We use the words first, next, then, and last to tell the order of what happens. It's important that when we retell a story, that we tell the events in order. Let's reread and think about what happened at the beginning of the story. Josie and Ling couldn't wait for the school day to end. They planned a sleepover at Josie's house. They were going to sleep in a big tent. Then what happened, second graders? That's right, their teacher assigned homework. So I've highlighted the most important parts of the beginning of the story, that they had planned a sleepover, but then their teacher assigned them homework to do. So I've written down in our first rectangle labeled first, Josie and Ling plan a sleepover at Josie's house. Their teacher gives them homework over the weekend. Here's that same sentence a little bigger if you need to see it to help you write it down. This is what happens first in the story. Press pause if you need, and then press play again when you're ready to move on. Okay, here we are at the next part of the story. Let's read to find out what was the next most important event in the story. The girls arrived at Josie's house and were delighted to be sleeping outdoors. Josie said, I'm so happy that we get to sleep in the tent. It will be lots of fun. I'll get the sleeping bags and flashlights I brought. So I highlighted the most important parts. They were going to sleep outside, and they had sleeping bags and flashlights so they could play games. So we wrote, the girls set up a tent in Josie's yard. They planned to play games. Press pause and then play again when you're ready to continue. Here is an example of that same sentence, just a little bit bigger if you need to read it. The girls set up a tent in Josie's yard. They planned to play games. All right. Now we're going to think about what happens next. After they got their tent set up and they were about to play their games, Josie's dad told them that it was time to do their homework. Second graders, were they excited about that? No way. In fact, it says Aw, they both complained. So they were complaining they didn't want to do their homework. So we can say that what happened then was that Josie's dad said it was time to do their homework. We can see that that is highlighted in the red circle. The girls have to do their homework. Go ahead and press pause and play again when you're ready to move on. All right, and now when they are looking at the nighttime sky, something happens. Before, the girls had been complaining about their homework, but now they're seeing really cool things in the nighttime sky, like crescent moons, a shooting star, the Big Dipper. Second graders, are they having fun now? They are. So I want you to think about what would you say happened last in the story? You can see in the red circle that Ling says, "This is fun. I really enjoy looking at the stars." So now the girls are enjoying themselves. They are having fun. And I wrote, they had fun looking at the stars. Here is our graphic organizer, a little bit bigger for you all to see it if you need. So we can look back and see that we were able to retell the story in order using our sequence chart, telling the most important events of the story. You all did an awesome job following along with me today. Tomorrow, you will fill out the same type of graphic organizer for our story, Mr. Putter and Tabby See the Stars. You'll do that one a little bit more independently. This one was a practice together as a class. You all did a wonderful job. I hope you have a great afternoon.